advocate for survivors of church abuse, Indigenous children. He has written several books that I will link in the show notes. But without further ado, I'm going to let Kevin have the floor.
Thanks,
Hey,
Tina.
Kevin.
Appreciate it. Hi. I'll give just a little bit of a background for folks who don't know, although you can see it all at murderbydecree.com, which is our site. Oh, there she is. Hi.
Hey,
Um,
Lisa.
Hey, Kevin. Hey, Tina.
Hi. So my background in this work started about 30 years ago on the west coast of Canada, where I was a Protestant clergyman. I began to find that there's a long sordid history that my church was involved in, along with the Catholics and the Anglicans, of carting Native children off to these concentration camps they call schools, and about half of them died there over a century. I mean, that's a death rate higher than in Auschwitz, right? And this was
Right.
constant, both sides of the border. This happened in America too, of course. And so over many years, after getting thrown out of the church, losing my family, getting blacklisted, the usual treatment of a whistleblower, um, we eventually started forcing change. We got Canada and the churches to admit that a lot of these children died. They covered it all up, of course, and they indemnified themselves legally, so they could never lose any property or money, which was their main concern, right? But as I got involved more, I got contacted from people all over the world, including in Europe, and same crime, same cover up. I went to Ireland to visit some relatives, and I met with some survivors of the Catholic Church there. And sitting there, I remember sitting in Dublin. This was in 2010, and these folks were talking about what had happened to them at the hands of these priests. And I said, this is like listening to data people on the West Coast. It's the same crime. I mean, used in medical experiments, sterilized, just all the gamut of things that are described as genocide under international law. They all happened. And so in that year, we formed an international tribunal looking into crimes of church and state. And this led to court cases that eventually helped force Pope Benedict Ratzinger out of office and other cardinals. It's really mushroomed all over the planet now because these crimes are global. And we were just talking about the whole case of Cardinal Timothy Dolan in America. And I got contacted by a group of Catholics in Buffalo, New York last month. And one of these women, Sue Moreno, was the brother of a priest, Joe Moreno, who had a whole bunch of documentation about child trafficking and the disappearance of children in the Buffalo diocese. He was set to go to the FBI on a Monday morning. Saturday, he's found dead in his office, 2 bullet holes to the back of the head. Cops say suicide. So how do you shoot yourself twice in the back of the head? I mean, and
Right.
so, but this kind of thing is common because the thing about especially the Catholic Church, they have the protection of the law and government. Every time there's like a major court case brought against priests, the Attorney General steps in. Doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, they all do this. The Attorney General steps in and makes sure that nobody higher than a priest can be charged, even though the order is coming right from Rome. There's a policy in the Catholic Church called crimen solicitatis. It's been around since 1929. It says whenever children are raped or harmed in any way, everyone is silenced. You're not allowed to tell the police or you get excommunicated. Well, I mean, that's a criminal conspiracy. That's like every Catholic is expected to protect child rapists in their own church.
Mm.
To really commit treason, you're told to disobey the child protection laws of America and its legal jurisdiction to follow Roman rules, right? And the more we educate people about that, the more people are coming forward saying, yeah, this has been happening. Well, no wonder, right? With policies like that and the whole system designed to protect this. So we recently did another court case involving the present Pope, Bob Prevost, who's from Chicago, which is a big hotspot of the mafia Vatican tie. We can get into all that if you like, but Prevost himself, like every pope, is a member of a cult. It's called the Ninth Circle, and it goes back centuries. We've had documentation of this from the Vatican Library. We've had insiders, survivors who were raised in the cult. It's a child sacrificial cult, mirroring the Catholic Mass, where it's believed that the blood and body of the innocent redeem you, whether it's Christ or a child. I mean, it's horrible. It's torture and cannibalism, often
Yeah.
newborns. And one of the places they get the children is through foster care, child protection systems, Catholic orphanages, and hospitals, right? right? They have protocol in certain hospitals, especially in New York, Chicago, some of the big cities, where babies are grabbed, fake documents are issued to conceal what happened to the child, like it died in birth and that, and then they're just trafficked. So none of this is conjecture. It's all based on eyewitness documentation, stuff we've been doing for decades now. And it's like moving a mountain. It's gradual movement, but you got to be really persistent and public, and be willing to confront these people, which is what one of the reasons in Canada we forced out the truth is we started going into Catholic churches and these other churches on Sunday morning, and just stand there nonviolently and confront them. And as soon as we started doing that, the government started squawking about apologies and investigations, which never happened. But it shows you that it's the people who have to lead this, because the present system at every level is complicit in a lot of these crimes, right?
We are finding that out on all levels of every government. It's very, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're
Well,
yeah. Go ahead. No, if you have questions or comments.
no, I was just gonna say thank you for speaking up. Like we were talking earlier, how again, people only care if it's directly affecting them. But in my mind, as soon as I know something's happening, I'm like, what are we gonna do about it? And that's why I ordered your Sovereign Citizen book the other day, and I'm gonna order the Whistleblower book as well to learn how
That one?
to do it correctly.
Is that the one you're reading?
Yes, that one. I'm so excited. I'm so
We
excited.
we've also part of our success is we set up common law courts to do this. And what a lot of people don't know is that under international law and in America as well, citizens have the right to form their own investigative bodies, including courts. And they're not just toothless bodies. The verdict of those citizen courts can be acted on by the courts anywhere in the world. And that's why when we forced Pope Benedict out, he hid out in the Vatican until the day he died, right? Because he knew that other courts, there could be arrest warrants issued against him, because we proved that it's quite a funny story, actually. We took our evidence and shared it all over Europe with governments, saying, here's the evidence that Pope Benedict was ordering bishops to conceal not just child rape, but the trafficking and disappearance of children, right? And it's in writing. So the Spanish government wrote to Rome and said that the Pope could face arrest if he came to Spain. 6 days later, he resigns. February 2013, first time in 600 years, a Pope had stepped down. And 3 other cardinals stepped down as well, including the head of the Jesuits, because they're all implicated, right? But they got to conceal the fact that it was a result of pressure from below, from the people doing this. In America, you've got an even better advantage. The whole grand jury system is based on the idea that the courts can be monitored by, they call it a fourth arm of government, right? The people themselves can put the courts on trial if they're corrupt or the complicit. So, I mean, Americans especially are very empowered to take action to stop this. But the problem is, being raised in a culture of dependency where you're always looking to a politician or somebody else to, fix it for you. And it's up to us, right?
Well, they're not going to fix it because it's protecting them and their power.
Yeah, Timothy Dolan is a good friend of Trump. As a matter of fact, Trump wanted him in as Pope. And they're levering now. There's a whole thing going on between Dolan and Trump where they're trying to force out the present Pope using the dirt we have on him to put Dolan in, And so, I mean, anyway, that's a whole typical sordid kind of, politics going on. But it goes right to the top, right?
So, yes. And so can you talk a little bit about how when you used to be a reverend, is that what church were you a leader of?
I hate titles.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
No, it's all right. Not doing. I prefer Rev Kev, which is
Rev
what
Kev.
everyone knows. People
Okay,
call me.
Rev
Just
Kev.
call me Kevin. No, but just Kevin was good. I was in the United Church of Canada. It's the largest Protestant church in Canada. It's like Presbyterian Methodist kind of background.
Okay.
But the United Church ran a lot of these native death camps. And so do the Catholics and the Anglicans, who are like Episcopalians in America, right? Church of England.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I had a background in street ministry and community-based ministry, so that's why I was hired in a little lumber town in Port Alberni. It's on the west coast in Vancouver Island, and it was at the center of the last kind of missionary invasion of native land. And first week I was there, they hired me because they were a dying congregation. And I started building up the congregation, and I invited in the native people who were like a third of the population, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
freaked out the older people because a lot of them had worked in these, they call them residential schools. They ran for over a
Mm.
century. The church, they had them in the
Yeah.
States, but they were worse in Canada because they were run totally by the churches. The Bureau of Indian Affairs ran them in America. And actually, in the 1920s, Indians in America were given the right to take out full citizenship. So they're citizens under the law, but they're not in Canada. They're under this thing called the Indian Act, which says if you're a native living on reserve, which a lot of them are, you're like a child. You're a ward of the crown, which means you can't open a bank account. You don't have legal rights. It's why,
Oh, wow, that's
you
really
know,
interesting.
Mounties go out and routinely kill native people, you know, and there's no consequence because they're not citizens under the law. Now that's illegal under international law, but this they don't race targeted legislation like
Mm-hmm.
an Irish act. You don't have an Italian act governing what Italians are supposed to, but you do with native people, right? And so that created the legal framework for this genocide to happen, and it still goes on. Big problem in the West with the Chinese takeover of Canada, pretty much all the oil and gas, all the resources. They're forcing their lingering native people who are still on the land. They're just disappearing en masse. 'Cause, you might have heard of the missing women's inquiry in Canada. A lot of native women and whole families go missing in northern British Columbia. Well, they go missing right along the oil and gas, the liquid natural gas lines, all through northern BC, which they're clearing out to grab. China's switching from coal to natural gas, and they need it. So, I mean, I'm constantly getting stories from natives in northern BC, like whole families just vanish. You never see them again, right? Or they end up on the
Wow.
streets in Vancouver. I remember when I was doing street ministry there, routinely, several times every month, they police will have shot a native person to death, right? And there's no
Mm.
consequence. They don't even get reprimanded. Said, "Oh, he attacked me with a knife when he was drunk." Well, that deserves a bullet through the heart. I mean, so that thing happens behind the nice camouflage of, nice Canadians, right? There's this
Mm-hmm.
whole legacy that shows why these genocidal things continue, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the power structures, and then the structures that are built to give justice were built by the people that are trying to escape justice, so they're not going to build something that is going to get them in trouble.
Right.
Okay, so after you started doing the street or, doing your Rev Kev stuff, how did you get into finding out about the Ninth Circle and all of these terrible things that were happening?
Yeah. Well, right from the very beginning, I would hear stories. Like I had an open pulpit when I had my church, so anyone could get up on Sunday and say whatever they wanted. And in the native traditions, an oral culture, right? So they love that. I mean, they have speakers. So a native man, the Chalnoth, these are like what are called Nootka Indians on the very west coast. And this Alfred Keatla was their speaker. He gets up at the pulpit one day, my second year there, and he starts talking about all these crimes. And he mentioned in the cult, he kept referring to the cult, and he told me after, he and his son told me that when they were kids, they would see they would carve weird things into children prior to raping and getting rid of them. There were ceremonies that went on, so we had inklings in this early on that something very cultic was involved in this. It wasn't, you know, you see, the courts reduced the issue very quickly to one of rape and physical assault. They never allowed any other issue to come into courts. Like they had mass sterilization programs. We've got in murderbycree.com and on our documentary film Unrepentant, we have people giving testimony, being placed under X-ray machines to sterilize them, tubal ligations, even castration. So,
Mm.
and if you were a particularly smart native, you got the red tag where you had to go and get sterilized. You know, um, in these Indian hospitals after the war. One woman said seen a tattoo there, and she drew an SS tattoo on the arm of these doctors that were brought over under Project Paperclip, which you probably heard about, right? The
Yes.
a lot of
Nazi.
the Canada brought more Nazis into its borders than any country in the world, because they would be brought in. The British and Americans recruited them, brought them into Canada, and then in the back door into America, because of course the MK Ultra programs um, used Nazi expertise and knowledge. They were the pioneers of
Yes.
it. So
Yes.
I wandered from Ninth Circle. I'm sorry. Um,
No, you're good.
as I got to see Canada was eventually forced to admit some of this stuff, but the month they did, the official narrative got put in, the official cover up that, yeah, some bad things happened, but we've apologized and we're all reconciled now. And there's going to be healing. And they, they totally fogged the fact of planned genocide that's continuing, right?
Hmm.
And so I got censored out of the media totally after that. I had been quoted a lot, and you never saw the name Kevin Annett in the press anymore. So it was like in South Africa under apartheid, if you were banned, you could not be mentioned in the press. You couldn't meet with more than two people. You were like, the Nazis called it natural nebel, night and fog. You would just fog the person in their memory of everything they did, which has pretty much happened. But people in Europe, like one door closed, another opened. And over in Europe, they invited me over. That's when the Ninth Circle evidence started to come out in a big way because it was based in Europe originally. And
Uh-huh.
just 2 hours ago, I spoke to a German woman who was one of the witnesses in our latest court trial, and she was raised in it. There was several people I met early on, like a Dutch woman, Toos Nienhaus, who was raised in this cult. You see, it's intergenerational, and you're born into it. You're expected to sacrifice your oldest child personally. So you have to torture to death, rape, and kill your own child, and then you advance in the cult, right? The term Ninth Circle, the ostensibly it's from the Dante, the poem written by Dante Alighieri, the Inferno. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
read it, but
Hmm.
it says nine circles of hell, and the lowest or ninth circle is where Satan and the souls of those who betrayed a sacred trust reside. So, like, trust is the most basic quality of human beings. The trust of a child is most sacred, right? And you're expected to betray that. In fact, the term ninth circle in Latin and the reference to it in the Vatican Library is nonos perfidia, which in Latin means the ninth betrayal. So you're kind of like, as human beings become degraded, they go to the level where they're willing to betray anything and anyone, their own humanity, their conscience, the life of a child, anybody. And then you can advance. And that they assume gives you power in the world, ultimate power, they believe, right? And we've had confirmation of that so much, it's undeniable now. And that's why even, it's like the word genocide. For many years, we were the only one using it in relation to Canadian natives. Now the Prime Minister, Pope Francis, they're all referring to genocide, right? And if you can't deny the truth, but if you're the guilty, but you can uh, reconceptualize it, spin it in a direction that doesn't, implicate
Implicate you.
higher ups, right?
Yeah.
They put in a false narrative, and they don't deny it. They can't deny it after a while, but they put in their own version of it, right?
They make
So, I
their
mean,
own
that's,
story up.
yeah.
That's kind of like what I feel like's happening to Prince Andrew right now.
Oh,
They're
he's the
like,
scapegoat.
"Hey,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll throw you to the wolves, buddy."
Yeah.
Oh.
Meanwhile, we could go in that direction a while because I've got a lot of dirt on the royals, but based on eyewitnesses from the natives, it's popular to go after kings and presidents or whoever, right? Because it's kind of sexy to hear about all these
Hmm.
people in power doing these things. But the point is, it's pervasive. It's all through the system. It isn't just the convenient scapegoats, right? You know, it's literally happening in your own neighborhood, not necessarily with the ninth circle, but related practices and you know.
So I have been going down. So once I started listening to you and I heard the Timothy Dolan thing, and then I started checking out your website and everything and listening to other pods, I kind of went down the MK Ultra rabbit hole. And,
Mhm.
you know, I feel like conspiracy is used way too much in the media and stuff, because if you really break it down, it's not a conspiracy. It's archived in our government paperwork. Like, MK Ultra was a thing. It was going on up there. They were trying to figure out how to mind control. It goes along with these cult things, and the Mormons and the Catholics,
Oh yeah.
and then we have these assassins running around, and I'm like, how is this connected? You know, it's just insane.
Mm. Yeah, that's the word for it. Um,
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so you went over to Europe and
yeah.
you met with all the survivors, and I've seen the woman you were just to, the Dutch woman. She's on your website, correct?
Yeah, and there's a 2-hour interview with her and her husband where she goes into great detail about how it operates, where she was taken. See, Toast was taken all over the world. She was in Melbourne, Australia, in a military base. And the thing about these Ninth Circle rituals, they're not arcane, weird, satanic people. That's part of the protection. Is you put out this image that it's just a bunch of weirdos, when in fact it's integrated a lot with the military, uh, medical research. You know, like Pfizer and a lot of the big drug companies were using children in these facilities for decades in drug testing experiments from which a lot of them died, right? And medical genocide, right? And but as part of that, the military, one of the main research goals of MK Ultra was to find out how the human brain could still operate under extreme trauma and torture, which had military application on the battlefield, right?
Right,
So
right.
they would like do threshold experiments,
Mhm.
rip parts
Yeah.
off children's bodies, monitor their brain function, all of that. So that was part of the purpose of these Ninth Circle ceremonies, to do that. So there's military, big corporate involvement. I mean, it's institutionalized, just like the arms trade, drug trafficking, human trafficking, the modern slave trade. I mean, it's all connected because it's very lucrative. You know,
Kevin, can you tell us in brief how that woman was able to get out of her circumstances and escape?
toast, toast. Yeah. Um, she met her husband when she was young, and he helped a lot. They also had help from, you see, these cults aren't uniform. There's factions, and like the way the Spanish government uh, levered Ratzinger out because Bergoglio, who became Pope Francis, was friends with the Spanish, and he used that to get himself in, right? Um, so similarly, within the Ninth Circle, there were people who didn't like what was going on, and they helped get Toast out and give her a new identity in that, because there were police involved, politicians, judges. I mean, like I say, it goes to the top. And so it was that, and they also left her alive. This is what they do. They will kill the eldest child. And one of the reasons that survivors find it hard to come forward is they're involved in the murders and the torture. They're expected. Like, for example, Toast said they handed her a knife and they brought in a young pregnant girl and she was expected. Got it. And then they eat the fetus, right? I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
mothers are expected to do that to their own newborns. I mean, it's that level of evil, right? So that's why people don't like to talk. But the thing about Toast is Casper, her husband, was a psychologist, and he got her into very deep SRA, satanic ritual abuse counseling, early on, and that helped kind of open up all the multiple personalities within her. When you talk to MPD survivors, I was just talking to a woman in Philadelphia the other day who had been in a similar cult, and to describe what happened, she reverted to her 8-year-old self. So the little child voice came out, right? And that's the only way she can talk about it, before reverting to her quote normal personality. So that was Kels had to go through many years of counseling, and under hypnosis, she began to recover some of these deep memories of what had happened to her. And so that's part of the story, how she survived.
Um, okay, so I had to do some research on the dissociative disorder and how the trauma creates the new neural pathways. And so So from my understanding, when they do the extreme trauma, it creates the other personalities, like the 8-year-old personality, and that's why they have to be hypnotized so that they can go into that other personality. Is that what you understand?
Right, and they also go into it naturally, just to protect themselves, right?
Right, right,
It's,
right.
I mean, in a way, we all do that. We're all dissociated to some
Yeah.
degree, right? Like Freud said, to live in society, you got to be dissociated between what
Yes,
you like,
yes.
your own principles, and what you need to do every day to get it. So in a way, people are pre-adapted to doing that already, and it makes it easier, in a way. Well, when
Well,
you're talking to people about these things, what's the response of 95% of people? Can't be
you're
true. It's
crazy.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're crazy, and it's not true because I don't want to believe it, right? I mean, that's
Absolute. Well,
right.
okay, when I first listened, I was like,
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
heavy.
Fair
But
enough.
since I had already had that Timothy Dolan connection there, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm okay. And then the more I listened, and then the Imagination podcast with Emma Catherine,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, listening to all of those survivor stories, how can you deny any of this after listening to these humans? Like, you don't make that up. I'm sorry, I
Well,
it's
and the old saying is the best education is a black eye, and when you go through these things yourself, you can't deny it. Like in my documentary film Unrepentant, I describe how when I was a minister, it was still, even when I was hearing all these stories from Native people, there was still that element of disbelief. It was just the church I was raised in, suddenly was responsible for murdering children. There was a disconnect there.
yeah,
But after I got fired, they went, or before actually, they went to my wife Anne. We had two children, 6 and 3 years old at the time, my two daughters, and they said to her, "We're going to make sure he never works again. So if you want to divorce him, we'll pay for it." And they did.
Wow.
That came out in divorce court. What you do with a whistleblower, you go after their closest people to them, right? And
yep,
subvert them. It's also very demoralizing when your own wife or husband is working to stab you in the back for pay, right?
right.
So when I went through that, I remember saying in the film, when I saw what they did to my children and me, I thought, well, of course they could have killed children. Look what they're doing to their own,
Well,
right? Of
and
course they're capable of that because of what I'm experiencing in my own life and how it's never stopped. The blacklisting, everything. Why would they be acting like that unless they were guilty, right?
yes, that's what I'm saying. And don't you
It's no common
haven't you
sense.
had multiple assassination attempts like on your
Well,
life and hits and stuff?
a few.
Yeah.
There was a poisoning in 2021. I've been attacked physically, but and all sorts of other things. But they've never sued me over 30 years, and
Correct.
that's significant because they don't want this in a court of law because it's true. So
Well, and
you,
if they did sue you for
yeah.
defamation, you would be able to bring all of your
Oh hell
evidence.
yeah! I could
Yes.
in examination for discovery. I'll say, okay, I want to see all the records from the church and the Vatican, the government, blah blah. They don't want that.
Mm-mm,
They just
mm-mm.
want to disparage. It's like I took a year of law once, and where I learned a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't take the oath of allegiance to the crown, so I couldn't go through it. But anyway, in legal process class, they said in trial, if the evidence is on your side, you argue the evidence. But if the evidence is against you, you attack the credibility of the witnesses. And that's all they've
Absolutely.
ever done. Kevin's a liar. Kevin rips off Native people, blah, blah, blah. You'll see it on the internet, right? But they never address the evidence. Like half the children dying for over 60 years. Why does that happen?
And
Well, it's deliberate.
well, and I really like how you build community with people because it's a ground level thing. If people know you and trust you, and when you
Yeah.
bring up these crazy ideas, but you're like, but you trust me, so I'm gonna piece it together for you in little baby pieces. And after
Mhm.
you have conversations with people, a lot of the time they'll be like, well, yeah, I could actually see that. I've noticed that in the past couple weeks having these conversations. And so
Right.
I'm just really appreciative of finding this. And they have you pretty scrubbed from the internet as well, except for
Oh, yeah.
the murder by decree page, which is amazing, by the way.
Well, I would say about 90% of the stuff we've ever done has been swabbed off the internet, and it's easier to do now. But it doesn't matter because the real evidence, it's proven that the horse is out of the barn, you can't close the door, right? I mean,
Like the
pointless for
Epstein
them to deny
files.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So
Horses
tell
are
us,
out.
I'm curious, tell us how it feels with, you've been doing this work for a couple decades, right, or more, and it feels like now with the Epstein issue in the public sphere, and everybody's aware of it, everybody's thinking about it. How does it feel now to see that in the public eye, and think about how maybe some of the ties you've made through the years will now be more available to the average person around the world?
Well, it's gratifying. It's one of the few things that keeps me going besides my own
Hmm.
stamina,
Hmm.
and because it's important, when you start out in this work, you get changed by it. I like that quote from Samuel Adams when on his deathbed, when somebody asked him how they made the American Revolution. He said, "We didn't make it; it made us." Right? Because
Yes.
you go into a process and you get changed by it. And I'm not the man I was decades ago. You get hardened, and the best qualities in you have to come forward because it's all you have, right? And
Yes.
you learn that self-reliance and everything. And it is so gratifying to see this change now. But the memory has been swapped, so people don't know where it's coming from. They're thinking, "Oh, the Canadian government did the right thing finally. That's nice." No, they were forced to do it from the
Yeah.
survivors, from we would hold protests. I'd be the only white guy there. Everybody else would be homeless Native people. And yet they forced it out. I mean, it shows the power. It's so affirming of what human beings can do when we don't give up, and
Yes.
when we just keep remembering those children are going to die if we don't act, right? That's what,
Well, and it's always the
you know,
pro-life people. It always makes me laugh. I'm like, yeah, okay, shut up. Like you don't want to feed them. You're taking them to these weird cult rituals, whatever. That's why you
yeah.
want all the babies here. Um.
Right. Well, that's
So
a good point because
yeah,
the so-called pro-life policy in the Catholic Church is so that it's cutting into the profit margin if they abort children who
right.
can then be used,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
like to say it all comes back to the money. If you follow the
it
money, you
does.
can find what you're
Do
looking
you
for.
want
Absolutely.
to?
That's
Would
right.
you want to talk about the Vatican Bank a little bit and explain that to me because I didn't realize that they had. I grew up Catholic, and as soon as they told me my thoughts could be bad, I had my first panic attack. I'm like, how can a thought be bad? And so that was the beginning of my deconstruction. You know what I'm saying? But um, I didn't know. Like, I always knew it was a money situation because obviously it
Yeah.
is no tax, money laundering, that whole situation. It's not helping people, and most places are not. But I didn't realize that
Yeah.
the Vatican Bank was so large and how it interweaved
Hmm.
with the New World Order and all of these things. So
Well, it's a secret society, so they're not allowed to be monitored. You can't know who the directors are. They can't be audited. Okay. So the Vatican Bank set up in 1929 by Mussolini, the fascist dictator. Because what happened in Italy was there was a guy called Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Garibaldi was like the George Washington of Italy. He united the country, and in 1879, I think, he deposed the Pope because there were these things called the Papal States, right? And between 1870, don't quote, no, 1870 and 1929, so 59 years, there was no papacy, there was no Vatican, right? It had no power. So, because the Catholics were so pro-fascist, in fact, fascism was really a Catholic Church idea that you got one ruler and everybody, you know,
right, same
follows the emperor, because
system. Yeah.
that's yeah, like the Pope, he sees himself as an emperor who's above the law, right? Um,
Yes.
and so anyway, fascism and Catholicism really one and the same beast. So the Vatican, Mussolini works out a deal where he sets up the Vatican Bank, hands over 1.5 billion lira, and makes the Vatican a government, a state, which is absurd. It isn't, but the world treats it like that. I wrote this really important book, Dethroning a Rogue Power. I wrote it for people at the UN to say this is why the Vatican needs to be expelled from the UN. It's a criminal body. It doesn't have the right to be there. Um,
Right.
and and so anyway, so the Vatican Bank set up, and it begins to launder money. That's one of its main purposes. There's a researcher, Dr. Catherine Horton, in Switzerland. And she spent years documenting from insiders and others what the Vatican Bank does. She figures about 80% of all the bank deposits in the world go through the Vatican Bank, or what's called the Bank of International Settlements in Geneva. And that's why right now a lot of the Vatican Bank money is being sent east to China, the so-called BRICS alliance, right? And this is why Trump wants to put in his boy to be Pope so he can get that money, right? Because it's the Beijing, the Chinese government is the only government in the world that gets to appoint Catholic bishops and cardinals. They made out a deal, right? So I mean, there's all this.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely, and it's all geopolitics, but that's really what it's all about. Like Lisa was saying, it's always you follow the money, and that's, the way it operates on the ground is it's a huge money sucking corporation. And I did a study. There's only one country in the world where the church publishes its financial records. That's the United States. And 10 years ago, we found that 14.9 billion was raised every year by the U.S. Catholic Church. Of that, less than 1% we used for charity.
I know.
Wow, that's profound.
So,
Wow.
I mean, they shouldn't have tax exempt status, because under the law, you only get tax exempt status if you put all of your revenue towards religious education or charitable works. Most of the money is going to, buy cruise missiles. They own the biggest small arms company in the world, Vatican Investments, online porn companies, big pharma. It's huge. And they do that. There's a good website, concordatwatch.eu. And a concordat is an agreement between the Vatican and other governments. And they have secret financial concordats in over 100 countries, including the US, where a certain percentage of your tax money is funded it goes directly into the Vatican Bank without your knowledge.
No.
Right, so, yep. Every taxpayer is funding the Vatican Bank through now you might ask your congressperson or senator.
They never call back. Don't worry, Kev, they don't call back.
I mean,
We're in Missouri.
I know.
You won't get a call.
Okay, well, fair enough. But at least it's to raise publicly the fact that, there's a secret concordat where you're committing a crime by funding a convicted, what's called a transnational criminal organization. The Vatican traffics human beings, they launder money, they are involved in the illegal arms trade. All those things, the UN Convention on Transnational Crime says those proven criminal bodies don't have the right to their own assets and property. And that's why we've been able in some countries to go in and just seize the Catholic churches and say, you don't have the right to this, you're convicted. We're seizing it as a public service just so that the revenue can't be used for criminal activity. Native people in Canada have done that. I've been part of these church reclamations, they call them. Just go in, tell the priest to get out, take over the building, use it as a daycare or something, right? So that's what they're really worried about, the threat to their money and their property and public image, right?
Always. But they have no shame.
In the States, we have laws that, if a church is tax exempt, they can't be political. But
they
clearly that's violated day in and day out.
All the time. Yeah, I know. They get away with murder, literally. And every administration, Democrat or Republican, they all back it. They wouldn't dare take on Rome. And that's...
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to tell me, so when you first started collecting all of this evidence of people saying that these things are happening, and you went to the ICC, correct, to see if they would take on your case?
Oh yeah, we tried every legal route in Canada, and none of the Canadian courts would do it because they can't put the crown on trial because they're an arm of the crown, right? And we tried the ICC and the International Court of Justice. They all said the same thing. They don't have a mandate for doing that. Not only they wouldn't take on Rome, but they can only try individuals. You can only charge individuals with genocide. But they've only done it twice in history. Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia and the Rwandan genocide. They put individuals on trial for that. But in 80 years, they've only applied the Genocide Convention twice. So it's a paper it's just a paper symbol. It's not used in real life.
Well, the
it's there to kind
system was built by probably people that it's going to protect. It's another justice system that was built probably to protect certain people, right?
oh yeah, well, like in my book, murderbydecree.com, I go into that. The word genocide was created by a guy called Raphael Lemkin, a Polish Jew who immigrated during the war. All of his family got exterminated. And Lemkin wrote the original definition of genocide, and he said it's the destruction of any targeted group for religious, political, anything. It was that simple, targeted destruction.
Right.
After the war, the big powers like America, Britain, say, uh-oh, we can be tried for how we've treated colonial people and native people in our own borders. We better rewrite this. So they set up a special commission. The final, you can read it, the final genocide convention, they define genocide as the intent to commit in whole and part the destruction of a particular group. Now, intent, how do you prove that in law?
Right.
How do you prove intent?
Right.
It's almost impossible.
They have to admit they were doing it. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So in other words, it got shifted from a crime. Also, there was Lincoln had three definitions of genocide: cultural, biological, physical. Cultural, you're trying to wipe out language, destroy families. Biological, sterilization, forced abortions, whatever. Physical, you line them up against the wall and shoot them. So they reconceptualized genocide as being physical. They left out the others because there's that infamous quote from the Canadian Prime Minister Lester Pearson at the time who said, if we applied the Genocide Convention, we would have to close all our Indian schools because clearly they're cultural genocide.
Because we're doing genocide. Yeah.
So we can't do that. Therefore, let's switch it all to genocide. Just means when you're shooting them, which in fact did happen, of course. They did execute Native people a lot. I've talked to women in Brantford, Ontario, who witnessed a Canadian soldier shooting kids and throwing them in the ditch, right? So, you know, they like to blame Americans for, you know, all these massacres of natives. In fact, it happened even worse in Canada. But anyway, the point is that genocide reconceptualized to protect the perpetrators, and it's still the case now, right?
Which moves along to, I want to talk about the tribunal court that you have set up. So once we realized, after the decades of collecting evidence and taking it to the justice system that is created, you found out there will be no justice in this system, obviously. So as citizens, we have to build our own. And I think that is just so, like, duh, but I didn't think of it. You know what I'm saying? So, so why don't you explain the last, most recent win that you just had and how you built that?
Well, it was really built on the previous cases. The very first case we did, we set up an international common law court of justice, which is called the tribunal of conscience under international law. It means you have the power of a court to lay charges to, as long as you follow, you know, rules of evidence and due process and that, which we did. We subpoenaed people, including the latest case. They didn't answer. Now, what happened in both cases, this was the first case against Ressner, and then the most recent one against so-called Pope Leo and Trump and a bunch of all people who were implicated in these recent child disappearances and that. None of them answered, which under the law, if you don't answer a charge against you, it's called a pro confesso, admission of guilt. Silence is consent, right? If I accuse you of horrible things publicly and you don't answer, it means you're not challenging it, you know, and that it can immediately issue a guilty verdict if they don't answer. So that's why these citizen courts are a win-win. If they respond, they recognize your court, they have to answer the charges. If they don't, they're admitting guilt. So they know that, which is why they kind of surround it all in fog and never report it in the mainstream media or anything. Because unfortunately, things these days are legitimate for people only if they're on the internet and there's official approval from somewhere, right? So anyway, so we did both cases. In the most recent one, it's even more damning because in the dozen years since we did the first court case, a lot more people have come forward. We have sources in Interpol, different police agencies, right within the church itself. We found a lot more. You can see, if you go to murderbydecree.com, you go to ITCCS updates on the banner, and the last 4 or 5 postings. It's all about this recent court case. Um,
Yes.
and some of the recent stuff we found is this whole Beijing-Washington connection going on. That addition to so-called ballroom that they're building to the on the White House. There's
Yeah, tell us
sources
about
within,
this.
well, Clark Construction, which is the contractor, heavily tied to all of the corporate people that have backed Trump. $300 million to build a ballroom? No. According to contractors who have worked for these people, they say that there's a lot of electronic hardware going in there, and it's got 3 subterranean levels. It's huge. It's even larger if
Wow.
you look, and on those postings, we put the schematics up. You can see, um, there's something huge going in there, and what's also interesting is Beijing and China are within half a degree of latitude of the same place on the planet, and they're exactly equidistant on the other side of the Earth from each other. So you could draw a line through the Earth, and Beijing and China would be, or Beijing and Washington are linked. And a lot of these uh, sacrificial rituals happen on energetic lines, ley lines all over the world to empower what they're doing. And Beijing and Washington are on that. And when you look at the way it's going, China is the rising superpower, and Trump's made a decision to latch on and to ally, despite all of his rhetoric and bellicose talk about China. That's just fog, for the masses. They're the new kind of corporatocracy, if you like. It's this huge rise in power in the world. And so,
His
yeah, sorry, go
family and
ahead.
his children have certainly profited a lot from, you know, their businesses in China over the last 8 or 10 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all about money, like you say, right? And um, so, and as part of that, some of the evidence we've come up recently is that Trump was seen at an Epstein party in the spring of 1999 in Manhattan, where there was a snuff film being made with a 5-year-old Asian girl who was killed right in front of them. He participated. It was a such sex orgy. And this is from Keith Schiller, who's the guy's former bodyguard to Trump. Keith Schiller. Um, and he doesn't work for him anymore. He has this private um,
Military-ish, militia.
contracting. Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's a contractor to provide security all over the world, like private armies. And when he was subpoenaed, it's actually he and one other guy, the head of the United Church in Canada, a guy called Gary Patterson, who was implicated directly in these rituals too. They both responded to the court, and they wanted to make a deal in exchange for providing more info. That's one of the ways we found out about this, right? Now, again, none of the people have denied any of this. Just, if you notice, King Charles, who was accused, went to Rome very soon after the verdict came out on October 6th. There he is in Rome, holding a Catholic mass. His coronation oath said he would protect the Protestant faith in England. There he is in Rome, and it's to show that they got each other's backs covered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've all been convicted lawfully in this October 6th verdict, right? And you can see
Mm-hmm.
the evidence online.
I'll put it
You
in the
know,
show notes.
yeah, I mean, it's just, right,
Yeah.
same shit.
Well, you can see all of the evidence on there and the testimonies and you know, so with those do you have a list of the 13 indicted people? I'm sure you know them. You want to
Yeah,
read them off?
I can pull it up, yeah.
Okay. I guess I
Um,
could too.
well, okay, so Andrew, Charles, both seen in Nine Circle Events. Charles, there was a story of a man, my friend William Coombs, who was a native man, and he described seeing Queen Elizabeth and Philip show up at a Catholic school in Kamloops in 1964 and take 10 children away, and they were never seen again. And
Oh.
William was to give testimony in London in 2011. The Mounties take him into the St. Paul's Hospital, and he's dead within a day. And the attending nurse described it as, she called them measles on the fingernails, which indicate arsenic poisoning. They said
Mm,
no tuberculosis. I mean, they killed him in a hospital, right? Turns out
right.
later we find out from insiders in London that Charles had been the one to put out the kill order on William because it implicated his mom, right? I mean, just house cleaning, getting rid of, like Charlie Kirk in Salt Lake City, house cleaning, because he was kind of a loose
Yes.
cannon who knew about the Mormon connection.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole story in itself. We did, but
Oh,
the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, he was former president of the Netherlands, who was seen. Tosnienhuis mentioned seeing him at these rituals. Covered up this crime for years. He's in at the head of NATO. You see, when you have that nefarious background, they put people like that in high positions because they can be controlled better that way, right? And
right.
he's been in hiding ever since the verdict came out, right? It
Yeah.
goes on. The head of Pfizer, what's
Borland.
his name?
Is it
Borla,
Borland? Yeah.
Albert Borla. He was
Borland.
president as well. Pfizer was using children again. Like I said, the big pharma, the military, that they all use these ceremonies for their own purposes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this German witness who I just spoke to a while ago described when she was a child being in Germany and seeing medical doctors having children in cages with kind of wires out of their head and they're taking blood from them regularly. And there's a whole medical aspect of this that's only being touched on. But do you have the list there? I can read it out.
Oh, here.
Wait a minute.
Let's see.
It's on.
Hold on. Let's see.
In the meantime, I have a quick question about, some of this is extremely dark, and
Yeah.
it reminds me about some of the issues that the folks that were believing the QAnon information,
Oh, yeah.
some of the things they
Oh, yeah.
were saying. And I'm wondering
Right.
if you see an overlap or how would that be connected?
What I say when people have evidence or allege to have evidence, I say, well, let's look at the evidence. It can't just be conjecture. It's got to be something that'll stand up in a court of law, like testimony backed up by other witnesses, backed up by documentation and forensic evidence, right? Like we provided when we did the digs at various Indian school mass graves. So when people just come online and allege stuff and say, okay, maybe, but let's see the evidence. And a lot of the people who do the whole QAnon thing, they have a whole view of the world, which it's like being in a religious cult. You have to be in their mindset to really believe it in a way, and it's like when people support Trump, it's irrational. He can do no wrong. It's like papal infallibility to a Catholic. You put leaders in who are incapable of doing wrong, and you're already living under tyranny right there, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our whole policy is we'll work with anyone, but on the basis of, protecting children, doing lawful prosecutions and sentences, which can then, we're kind of calling the world back to the rule of law, which is being thrown out the window quite often.
Indeed, that's
Anyone
the
who goes
case.
anyone who goes into court realizes that, right?
Well, it's like an opinion, it's like, oh, well, who has more money to have more lawyers to keep appealing everything, which is
Right.
exactly how Trump is not in prison and he's the president. Okay, let me read the top officials that are charged. Let's see, with crimes against humanity, we got Pope Leo, we got Mark Rutte, Charles Windsor, aka King Charles, Andrew Windsor, aka Prince Andrew, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Donald Trump, the stinky president of the United States, Keith Schiller, his former assistant to Donald Trump, Albert Bourla, CEO of Pfizer, Fred Hiltz, former Anglican primate of Canada, Pietro Parolin, Cardinal of Church of Rome, Timothy Dolan, the Fox News and Friends Cardinal of Church of Rome, Reinhard Marx, Cardinal of the Church of Rome, Gary Patterson, United Church of Canada, you are hereby ordered to appear before the court on Monday, September 15th to answer to criminal charges that you have actively participated in trafficking and cult ritual, rape, torture, and murder of children and adults. Ew, gross.
Yeah.
Weird. How do you got time for that?
Pardon?
How do they have time for all this? This seems like, a full-time job here, Like,
Well, they don't have to worry about working.
yeah,
They
I
just
know, I
keep
guess you're
everybody
right.
worrying and in debt, so they don't working and in debt, so that they don't have time to fight
I
against this evil, right?
know. I know,
So
I know.
we were talking about people in power. Having followed this for a long time, How did you feel when Bill Barr became our Attorney General here in the States?
I don't know a lot about him. I don't trust anyone in power. kind of this, kind of an anarchist, right? But I don't know. Tell me about him. What do you think about him?
Well, in general terms, his father was the person that hired Jeffrey Epstein out of school back in decades ago,
Mhm.
and
With
he's
no teaching degree.
he's
Weird.
definitely a staunch Catholic, and he was the person that was in charge when Jeffrey Epstein when he died in jail.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and
Well,
his dad had written
not a
books
surprise.
about raping children and child trafficking, weird alien things, and it just all. Do you think that corruption, do you think money and power cause the corruption and nastiness, or do you think it's innately there and then they go to those positions naturally? What do you think?
I often wonder about that. I don't know. People used to ask me that as a minister. Like, are people inherently evil? And I mean, I think human beings are capable of anything. We're very adaptive. That's been our survival advantage in evolution, that we adapt not just physically to our environment, but you know, um, what we're raised in is the norm. It's like when counseling women who keep marrying rapists and violent men.
Right.
Well, that happened to me when I was 3. It's the only way I know I was being someone loved me is when
Loved.
they
Yeah.
beat me, right? So we're like that. Doesn't mean we have to stay like that. But having encountered what you might call definitely the dark side, um,
Hmm.
I know that there is a force. I don't want to put religious terms on it, but there's a force that seeks to corrupt and destroy us, um, our integrity as human beings, right? Like that ninth circle practice, right? Whoops,
Right.
sorry,
No,
sorry
you're
about
fine.
that. So, yeah, we're fighting evil. Like this thing operates on different levels, the seen and the unseen, and we can't ignore that.
Now
So,
that
I
we've
mean,
seen it.
yeah. Well, I had an encounter with it. I did before the thing in Rome. Did I tell you about the exorcism I did in Rome?
No.
Oh, this was fun. October
Oh.
2009. I get invited to Rome, and I bring with me the remains from a mass grave of children at a Catholic Indian school in Ontario. And I was
Mm-hmm.
going to do a ceremony for them right in St. Peter's Square. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, this is the heart of the beast, right? Like I can't pass
Ooh.
this up. So
Right.
I had done being involved in an exorcism once before in Vancouver, which I'll mention. And I thought, go to address this entity, call it out, right? So I'm standing there, and what's really funny is you're not allowed to do anything in St. Peter's Square, a ceremony, a protest, anything. They grab you like that. It happened to a group of Native grandmothers. They were arrested for doing a pagan ceremony in St. Peter's Square. All they were doing was smudging and, but boom,
Uh-huh.
they're in jail. So anyway, I'm standing there in my clerical robes with the stuff, and I'm calling out this entity of Rome. And the cops and everyone are walking by me. Maybe they thought I was a priest or something. I don't know. But the point is, it was like I was invisible. And the next morning, this is October 12th, 2009, a tornado hits downtown Rome. Boom. First time in like 45 years.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
That same week, the first reports came out in the European press about Ratzinger's role in concealing this. So, I mean, all these doors are opening. Boom. And I realized, okay,
Yes.
I was standing at the epicenter or something, right? And kind of channeled through what I was doing. And I know what had happened earlier when I was still a minister in Port Alberni. We did I was invited by a native shaman to help remove this. They have a different name for it in their culture, but expel this entity from this young boy. And we worked it was very, quite an ordeal, but for days we were doing this. Finally, when the boy is freed, it was so beautiful. It was like the moment of my daughter's birth, right? When life, you see life appear, and this beautiful kind of light came through the room. And but then, as it left, I felt this thing. It was like it turned and went like this, and it caught me right here, right above the heart.
Uh-huh.
And later, I began to get not just the effect of the divorce and the blacklist and that, but I said to one of my counselors, it's like I'm being eaten from the inside out. And
Uh-huh.
I get a call from this woman, Larissa, out of the blue, and she said, I had a dream about you. I want to see you. And this is in Vancouver. And I go there and she looks at me. She starts telling me all sorts of things about my life that nobody could possibly know, right? And she said, there's something in you. They put it's like a device to suck out your soul, basically. It's the way
Oh,
she put it, right? And she worked on it and she said, um, you'll always carry the scar, but it's sealed now. And it happened for a reason because it gives you an insight into this other world. And it's true. When I began to do more meditation, then I realized I knew when things were coming at me. I knew when the danger was there. I knew who was telling the truth and who wasn't. It kind of opened up this whole
uh,
thing. And
yeah.
I remember one of the native elders told me after what happened in Rome, and I think I was protected in Rome for that reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the native elders said, Kev, I hear that you're from Ireland. You must be a druid. Because I've been reading about those guys, and they could control the weather, they could shapeshift. And I thought, hey, oh, yeah. On my mom's side, we were O'Neills, the last of the Ulster Druid kings, the High Kings, and also they were Druids. And I'm thinking, yeah, our bloodlines come into this. Who we are, where we're coming from. It affects all of this. So I realized, okay, this is part of a much bigger drama
Bigger
here,
thing. Yeah.
than, and so that's kept me going. It was a long kind of explanation, I know, but it all explains why I think I'm still around and doing this for bigger reasons, right?
Isn't that so? I had a near death experience 10 years ago, and that was when my mind changed as well. Like, almost like living not in a different reality, but seeing things that I'm like, wait, guys, I'm trying to tell you something here. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Everything's fine. So um, it's a thing. I totally believe in that stuff. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons I mentioned that too, I forgot. I had when this thing struck me, I had an image of it, and I saw it in my heart, and it was pretty grotesque, but it was spiky, had tentacles, and I saw these tentacles in a lot of people. They were like, right,
Sucking
and
them
it
in.
was, yeah, it was energy captivation. It was like uh, energetic vampirism, if you like, feeding on.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, we're all in a narcissistic relationship here in the United States. So, with our
Mhm.
president, okay, it's like we've all dated this. Come on, guys. I could look at the way he texts. He's crazy. Come on.
Yeah, well, there
Uh,
was there
oh,
was that ad in the New York Times right before the election, and a whole group of psychiatrists diagnosed him
yes.
as
Yeah.
criminal
A malignant
psychotic, right?
narcissist. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
A
and so
sociopath.
Yeah, red
just like
flags have
Hitler.
been raised.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Unfortunately, no one's really paying much attention. Maybe now,
They're like,
not
we
then.
like
oh, I think so.
it.
Yeah.
You know what? He's waning his support. Even a lot of
Oh,
Trump bots
absolutely.
support that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Um,
interesting to see Marjorie Taylor Greene out on what I don't know if she's on a redemption tour or just going
she's
through a
going to run
PR
for
change or
president.
what. But
She's going to
she's
run
been
for
saying some
president.
things I would not have expected her to say. It's very interesting.
Well, and look in the elections that just happened, in
Hmm.
Virginia and New Jersey, the
One
governors now they switched.
Dems
Yeah.
Yeah.
everywhere, even in Mississippi, deep red. Everything went blue, but also I just have a feeling where the elections next time, the midterms, they're placing the military in the street for a reason. But I don't think people
Yeah.
are going to deal with it. I think they're at that point, like they're starting to get there. And then you make them hungry and sick on top of it. Oh, bring it on.
Oh,
Come
yeah.
on, let's go.
Yeah, but that's why we wrote this book, because it says, look, from our experience, people have the right to take back power, especially in America, where it's written right in the Constitution. People can govern themselves. They can break away from their own local, they call it home rule charters. I actually worked with some people in Pennsylvania who did this, because there was Pennsylvania General Energy was dumping frack water on their land. This is in somewhere in central Pennsylvania, I forget which county.
I remember,
And
I
so
feel like, yeah.
it was in Rolling Stone magazine that reported this. They formed
Hmm.
under the Pennsylvania state constitution they said you can pass a home rule charter, which allows a local group of citizens to pass their own laws. So they banned the fracking. They fought years in the Supreme Court. They eventually won. So 700 Republicans and Democrats united to keep the fracking wastewater out of their communities, the farming community, right? So I thought, that's a model. You unite at the base, form these local assemblies, and that's a lot of the work I do now, actually, in many countries. We're doing these common courts led to assemblies. We set up a framework in Canada for a republic. We have local assemblies and courts. And that's how you solve this problem. You take back power into the hands. I mean, that's something you're taught from day one in America, that, you're in a republic and the government is of the people, not the government isn't over the people, right?
Yeah, and we've gotten lazy. So that book that I ordered of yours, I'm going to be going through, ordering more and putting them all in those little libraries around town.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, because I'm like, guys, just read a book. Let's read a book. You guys want to read a book? Yeah. They're like, no books.
That's a lot of work.
Well, I don't know.
You can do an audio book. I'll read it to you.
I'm trying to do that, actually. I don't have enough hours.
I'm being sarcastic.
Oh yeah, you should totally do an audiobook. That would be so cool.
Well, yeah, you should narrate it too. You have a good voice for an audiobook.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I was told that.
Yes, I was. Not me. I'm never told that.
I have a question about the court you've developed. I'm curious about the logistics of it. I assume it's a physical situation, not just an online entity, or how is it set up?
Originally, it was set up like any other court. It was in Brussels. That was the first one in 2012 in the summer we set up. Problem is, we began to get targeted right away. Evicted from buildings, police harassment. I mean, as can be expected when you're taking on these big characters, right? So we had to relocate to other locations. Some of the jurors in the first case were in other countries, so they were linked by Skype. But it was physical because in a bona fide court of law, anyone who makes a statement has to be able to come into court and validate it. It can't just be some email, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's always been physical, but it's been decentralized. The latest one we had it based in America as well as in Belgium, because a lot of the stuff we were digging up was in America, like the Trump Dolan thing, Keith Schiller, that whole thing, Pfizer, all of that. It's very much America based. So yeah, it runs like normal court of law, due process rules.
How do you seat a jury for this type of thing?
We follow the usual process. We put a call for jury members. We invite the people being charged to take part in jury selection. There, in that book we wrote on common law training manual, there's 12 steps about how to set up a court. We just followed this, and
Okay, I'm gonna order that. Okay, got more books.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a manual. Like, you can do it, and our Constitution in the United States gives us that right as well to do this.
Generally, but you also have to check out your state constitution, like in Pennsylvania, because that's where it's more likely for that home rule right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So check it out. Are you both in Missouri?
We are, yes. Yeah.
Where? What part of Missouri?
Central.
Central, right? Capital.
Because I'm actually coming down to the States. I'm half American. My dad was from New Jersey. And so I've got a place in Florida I go down to kind of get away from it all. But I'm always giving talks up and down kind of the Midwest, East. So we'll have to line up something. It'd be great to give a talk or something.
Absolutely. We started a grassroots organization here locally. We've been doing all the rallies. We got all the food runs running. We got homeless mobile food kitchens, all the stuff. So I have a place for you to speak. I have a platform. So if you let me know, I will get you scheduled.
Yeah, it's going to be either during December or early in the year, so it'll be relatively soon. And
okay, well, you just let me know your dates, and we'll figure something out.
I sure will. I'll keep you both posted.
Okay, I have one last question for you, so I don't waste your whole Saturday.
It's not a waste.
This is personal, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want. But do you still believe in God?
You'd have to define what you mean by God, but I mean,
Okay.
and that's always hard because
I know,
it's,
I know, I know. And I just was thinking, I was like, okay, do you still have faith? I'm sure your faith has changed in
mm-hmm,
what you were originally taught when you were Rev Kev
Rev Kev.
to the after seeing the demon
Yeah,
exorcism and all of these
yeah,
dark entities, it's really hard to believe that God would let this happen
Yeah.
is what my mind tells me. So, but
It
yeah. I
sounds
I
like
don't.
have to
you've
have
had to be immersed in a lot of dark, really dark things. It
Yeah,
sounds
but you
very
know,
traumatic.
it has been, and I would say that the man I was died, and you go through a death experience, and then you come out the other end, and you're different. And you can't put
right,
it into words. And even as a minister, I used to say to people, I'm not going to pray for you. You know, a minister stands up and leads people in prayer. Said,
right,
A, God isn't deaf. You know,
right.
you don't have to, like Baptists do, Lord, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yelling to the rafters, right?
right,
No,
right,
if there's a God in the way we've been taught, then God knows our hearts. And we just
right.
have to be
He's part of
contrite and,
us.
right, like the fish swimming in the water, right? How do you
Hmm.
describe the water? I mean, it's like part of our being. And
Mm-hmm.
like my native relatives always tell me, you know, you can't talk about the sacred. It loses its power. You just embody it every day and how you live, you know, and it's about love and family and truth and all the things that we know innately as human beings. It's there. It doesn't need explanation. So um, I don't believe in I never believed in organized religion, even as a minister. I knew it was bullshit. Okay.
Okay,
It's
cool,
human
cool.
power. Okay. Right.
Yes.
But I believe very much in this, and still do, in the spirit and the teachings of Christ. And he always felt like my brother. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that if you look in that whole theology about, um, in ancient Hebrew, it's called lamed vav. They were called just souls. And the belief is in every generation, there's a certain number of just souls born who take on the sorrow and suffering of humanity. And you know who you are, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yes.
can't look away. You just can't.
Right.
Okay, so these just souls hold the whole game together. They hold humanity together and create hope for the future and the next generations, right? And and when you know you're one of those people, it's not an ego thing. It's just a recognition of who you are, because then it's your
Right.
responsibility, and that's what's led me. So it gets clarified. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of wax, losing my daughters, going through that horrible grief and suffering, right? I mean, it made me love them, and the time I had with them, right? Because it was a church-funded court order that restricted me to no time with them at all, right?
Ugh,
But
that's
I
so
wouldn't.
crazy.
Our time together was that much more sacred, and they both, Claire and Eleanor, my two daughters, they both say that to me. They're in their 30s, but they say, Dad, we knew um, what what you were going through was so hard, and it made the time with us all the more important because of the way you loved us unconditionally, right?
Hmm.
You know, so that is one of the beautiful things that comes out of this. Right? And people often say to me now, that's an inspiration because if you and these Native people could go through these horrible tortures and yet come out the other end and inspire people, then I can do it too. Because we,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
the
my whole
trouble,
thought. If
right?
people can go through this suffering, I can speak for them.
And you can go through anything and survive
Yeah,
because, you know,
you're a
and
survivor.
perfect story about that. William Coombs, the native man who saw um, Queen Elizabeth take those kids away, he couldn't go near a Catholic church, even her. They used to put him on a rack and sodomize him
Ugh.
with an electric cattle prod because he was a traditional man, a spirit dancer, and they targeted children with traditional sacred knowledge. Um,
Mm.
and anyway, he couldn't go near a church. The day we did this historic occupation of the Catholic Church in Vancouver that forced out the apology, it was in March 2008. And I go in there, we go in, the doors are standing wide open. There's no knights of Columbus and no cops standing there that day. So I said to everyone, come on, let's go in. And we go into this huge cathedral. And I look around, and, you know, we're deflating the parishioners and about the missing children. We have a banner saying all the children need a proper burial. One priest physically assaults me gets me in an arm lock, and I don't budge. They eventually walk away in frustration, and we're left there with the congregation. But I look around, and there's William inside with a big smile on his face, handing out flyers. And if you knew what William went through in a day, you would know what a bloody miracle that was. And
It
I asked
freed
him
him.
later, yeah, I asked him later, how did you do that? And he said, all the counseling in the world never helped. But when I saw you all going in there, I didn't want to let you down.
Yep.
And I
Power
didn't
in
want
the
to get
group.
left out.
Yep.
He
He felt
stopped
supported,
drinking.
man. Yep.
Well, he also stopped drinking. He was a chronic alcoholic who didn't drink after that, right? He
Wow.
recovered that part of himself, but we did it together, right? It was like a group exorcism, right? And all the dominoes started collapsing. They started admitting these things within a month of that. We kind of like did in native, in movies when you see a native person count coup, they called it counting coup, where you're right in front of a more powerful enemy, unarmed, and you hit them with a coup stick and take their power away because you say, look, I'm braver than you are. We're unarmed, and we've done this. And that's what we've done.
Yeah.
We counted coup. That's why it collapsed, right? So spiritual
The
warfare.
truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. And
Yeah,
and that's why they're so mad. And that's why we're going to get that whistleblower book too.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll bring all the books with me when I come. It'll be a delight to meet you and meet your group and see all the work with you guys.
Yeah, that'll be so fun. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. We'd love to have
My
you on
pleasure.
again. But when you
Okay.
come through town, we're totally gonna get together and
Good.
we're gonna change the world together. I'm super excited.
Good. But we'll stay in
Okay.
touch. Talk real soon.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press stop on here and then wait a minute because it'll take a minute for the download to go through. Just make sure that your part is downloaded or it'll be weird. So hold
How
on.
do I do that?